Stephanie is a 9-year-old girl whose parents have left her for some reason. She barely takes care of herself and lives alone in her house. A soft turtle toy that Stephanie calls Francis is her only friend. On a typical day, Stephanie watches cartoons, plays the piano, makes smoothies for herself, and spends time with Francis the turtle when she turns on the television. The deplorable state of the world, in which supernatural forces are wreaking havoc in various nations, is shown on television news programs. Additionally, they mentioned that a strict quarantine has been issued, requiring individuals to remain inside their homes. However, Stephanie, who is 9 years old, does not pay any attention to such matters and simply switches to her cartoon channel. She frequently wrecks the house and is clumsy at everything she does. Despite this, she is content and happy to live on her own without her parents. On the same day that Stephanie is making a smoothie in the kitchen, she hears a loud noise coming from upstairs. Scared, the little girl rushes upstairs to find Stephanie. Assuming somebody is welcoming her to play without knowing who the individual is, Stephanie shouts at that person and gets back to the kitchen. She screams in pain because she stepped on a broken piece of glass there, but there is no one to care for her. She quickly regroups and walks upstairs, where she gets a first aid kit and treats her wound. Later that night, Stephanie makes dinner and serves it on plates for her parents, her brother, and herself. Francis is not included. That cannot be right. After brushing her teeth and going to sleep the next day, Stephanie reads a story to her doll Francis, places him on the floor, and encourages him to play hide and seek. She then immediately enters a room and hides inside an improvised tent while perusing a photo album of her family. Outside the house, Stephanie hears the sound of a dangerous creature. The monster hurls near Stephanie, but it leaves when it doesn't see anyone for a while. Terrified, she closes her mouth and tries to keep quiet. Stephanie approaches after slowly emerging from her tent to investigate the animal. Unfortunately, she sees nobody and reasons that the animal has gotten away into the close-by woods. She then, at that point, lets Francis know that the beast could do without commotions, so they ought to stay quiet in the early evening as Stephanie is playing football with Francis. She observes Mr. Hopper, her pet rabbit, stumbling around the garden. Stephanie rushes to the kitchen to prepare some food for Mr. Hopper after learning that he has somehow managed to escape his cage. After some time, she returns with a bowl filled with tomato sauce. After that, she tries to entice Mr. Hopper back inside, but she fails because the rabbit flees into the woods. Dick had said, "The rabbit doesn't deserve my tomato sauce anyway." Later, while Stephanie was brushing her teeth at night, the electricity suddenly went out, scaring her. She then rushed to her brother Paul's room and held his hand strangely, but it looked pale and weak like he was already dead. However, Paul the protector slowly moves his hand when Stephanie urges him, implying that he is under the control of a supernatural force at night. This frightens her when she hears a loud bang outside the window. The little girl follows the trail of blood and discovers her pet rabbit Mr. Hopper severely injured and bleeding on the table. Enraged, she enters Paul's room and blames him for the rabbit's death and their parents' departure. She then picks up a baseball bag and begins pounding his body. Paul's head is now lying on the bed as a result, and the cover slips, which uncovers his deteriorated face. The next night it is pouring and the power again cuts off. When Stephanie goes to the basement to buy candles, she notices that the washing machine is shaking violently, as if someone is trapped inside. Fearful, she runs right to her improvised tent and goes to bed late. Stephanie hears somebody opening the entryway. Water is all over the floor when she goes downstairs to check it. When lightning strikes, she assumes that someone has escaped the house. One can plainly see that somebody is remaining despite her good faith. I don't think I've ever described a jump scare like that before. Scared, Stephanie locks herself in the bathroom. She closes her mouth in horror when she hears footsteps approaching, but to her surprise, her parents Eric and Jane have returned to see her. The next day, the child reunites with her parents and sleeps with them. Jane changes her clothes in front of Stephanie, thinking she is sleeping, but Stephanie is awake and stares strangely at her mother from behind. Stephanie is scared when she sees her father carrying wooden blocks as he attempts to construct a fence around the house. He claims that he is doing this to protect the house from the monster. Stephanie rushes to her brother's room when she sees these scars on her mother's belly. However, without informing anyone, he does not find his body there. After that, she goes looking for her brother in the woods. However, to her dismay, she discovers that her parents have already buried Paul near the backyard. Enraged, the young girl frantically tries to remove Paul's body with her hands. However, when Stephanie returns home, her parents call her, and her mother Jane tells her not to step outside the fence without their permission. The young girl does so, but Stephanie asks her mother why she left her alone in the house the next morning while having pancakes for breakfast. Jane responds that it was not her choice because they had assumed Stephanie was also captured by the monster. Hearing this, the child informs her mother that the monster lives in the woods and will attack them whenever the house is in disarray or a state of discord. She also says that when the monster comes into the house later in the night, one should remain calm and scientific. An unseen force brings Paul's body back to the house through the window. His parents are sad to see this because they had just buried him. Stephanie, on the other hand, behaves normally as if nothing had happened during dinner. She asks Eric if the monster brought her brother back, and Eric confirms it. He also tells Stephanie that the monster is after her and will follow them wherever they go in the next scene, Stephanie sneaks into her mother's room and finds numerous newspaper articles posted on a board. One of the articles discusses how young children like Stephanie commit the terrible crimes. Stephanie reads a book that is kept on the table and learns more about that. Jane bursts into the room and causes Stephanie to hide under the table as she actually tries to learn about brain surgery and its procedures. Jane gave the impression of being anxious when she viewed the mental images. After Stephanie is seen chilling in the bathtub, she loses her temper and throws them away. When Eric approaches her, he tells her that the monster is only the result of her bad feelings and that she needs to control herself and try not to let the bad feelings take over. Stephanie politely agrees. However, she asks her father in response why she was left alone. Eric becomes emotional as a result of this, and he slowly whispers that he was afraid and didn't know how to save his family at night. When Stephanie comes downstairs, your parents are here discussing how to control her. Jane suggests that they perform a brain procedure, but Eric opposes it, stating that it carries high risks. Eric appears optimistic, believing that Stephanie can control her emotions. Jane, on the other hand, thinks otherwise. Additionally, he frequently states that he does not wish to lose his daughter Stephanie. She simply returns to her room to sleep in her dream after hearing everything. She slowly walks toward the entrance door after hearing an odd sound coming from the opposite side, and as she does so, she notices that it is already open. As soon as she gets close, the door closes, which still makes her afraid. She slowly opens it once more, and she sees the ghost of her father on the other side. She starts screaming, and she eventually wakes up from her nightmare. However, Stephanie still isn't sure that it was just her imagination, so she goes downstairs and stands in front of the same door. However, her parents arrive just in time to comfort her. When Stephanie tells Eric that she saw the monster kill him in a dream, the entrance door opens suddenly. An unseen paranormal force drags Eric out, and Jane carries Stephanie to a hiding place in a closet. In order for the monster to not hear them and return later, Stephanie asks her mother to remain calm and silence. When Jane steps out of the closet to look around, she notices nothing, which she tells the young girl. Then, everything goes quiet. That, regrettably, everything is under control. She is pulled by the same unidentified force when she asks Stephanie to accompany her. Stephanie runs to her room in fear, grabs Francis, and leaps from the window, injuring herself along the way. But immediately gets back up and tries to return to the house by way of a ladder. Eric and Jane attempted to stop her, but the unseen force prevailed, which seems to come from the child herself and keeps pulling them back. Fortunately, Jane pulls Stephanie down from the ladder with the last of her strength. The parents are lying on the ground as a strange creature with tentacles attempts to attack them from all sides, but their problems are far from over. Jane tells her daughter to stop, but the girl is too scared to do so, so she doesn't, but before anything bad happens, Jane whips out a chloroformed hanky and sets it against Stevens. She tells Stephanie that the next day you are the monster after putting her to sleep with the creature silenced. Eric consoles Stephanie as she awakens, apologizing to her parents for leaving the house without their permission. With the assistance of some pendulum balls, he attempts to hypnotize Stephanie and asks her about what she did to Paul. The young girl closes her eyes and reveals that it was while she and Paul were carving pumpkins for Halloween. He believes that she has a monster inside that is controlling her actions in her mind. She attacked him with all of her arms, i.e. tentacles, because he started teasing her. Jane administers a vaccine to her after she resumes her violent behavior. Eric tries to stop his wife from cutting Stephanie's head open while the parents take her to an operating room, but Jane tells Eric that it is the only way to keep her alive and safe. It turns out that she wants to operate on the brain in order to get rid of the monster. Unfortunately, the possessed child regains consciousness just before the procedure can begin, and Eric is watching the news as the lab is destroyed by her powers in the next scene, which talks about how many doctors and other medical professionals have died as a result of a bad medical procedure that was used worldwide to treat children like Stephanie. In the news, it is also mentioned that the medical procedure was the last hope for a cure. Now that it has failed, the only option left is to euthanize the children with this rare condition in the morning, and Stephanie acts as though nothing has happened. In contrast, Eric asks Stephanie to accompany him for a walk in the woods while the father-daughter duo bonds outside as the parents plot to kill their daughter by poisoning her hot chocolate. While Stephanie apologizes to Eric for hurting him, Eric is moved by the commerce. Yet, after a brief delay, he requests that his little girl drink the hot cocoa. However, just before she can drink it, her supernatural powers discard the sipper and her face begins to become blue. She attempts self-control but fails. After the incident, Stephanie compels Eric to reach for his gun and shoot her multiple times. When Eric returns home, he is devastated and believes Stephanie has passed away. He cries heavily and admits his guilt for what he did, though. When he went to bury Stephanie's body the following day, he found her dumb for at the fence's back door. Eric tries to react, but Stephanie doesn't give him a chance and uses her telekinesis to throw him in the air. She then goes to the bathroom to find Jane and brings her down, hitting her mercilessly on the walls. In the final scene, she stabs Eric and breaks Jane's bones, instantly killing both of them and stating that they should never have returned. She uses her telekinesis powers to destroy the entire house, drags her parents' bodies outside, and leaves them at Paul's grave. She also destroys the other houses in the neighborhood after dropping and stepping on her toy turtle. This is supposed to show that she has been taken over by the Force. It looks like her shadow has extended tentacles like an enormous octopus. The movie ends with an aerial view of the entire planet, which has been completely destroyed by dangerous fires. This indicates that a number of other telekinetic children are still alive and well. To assist please like, turn on notifications, and subscribe to more videos like this one. I thank you for watching.